second version of the Michigan Lacrosse Review. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We've got with us, as we always do, Chris Coleman, former head coach at the University of Detroit Mercy, who now runs Team 91, and my broadcasting partner for the Titans, John Losey. John, welcome back, and Chris, the same thing. We just wanted to say hello. We've got a different view. We're trying to something with the Zoom to make it cute and make it so that we can all look together so we're not kind of potted. So we're giving this as an experiment. We'll give it a shot. So thanks for coming aboard, and I just thought we'd start with a conversation. Hopefully you guys have had a good week.
Yeah, no, I got to tell you, I like the format. It's different, it's new, so it does make it more, as if we're together, even though we're on Zoom. But yeah, no, good week. As I always say, Greg, I wake up with air in my lungs. I've got things to accomplish. That's it.
College lacrosse started. It was a great week.
Yep,
It was.
except for watching it. So don't get me started on that.
Well, I thought we would start. We had a little bit of an opportunity last week to go to talk to the University of Michigan coach Kevin Connery, and they got off to a good start against Marquette, 14-1. And when I saw the score, Chris, I was just shocked that a program like Marquette could only score one goal.
Well, I mean, they're a program in transition, lots of new faces on the field. But and Michigan's a steamroller. We know that all those Big Ten teams, it's a steamroller waiting to happen. And, I know Jake Richards very well. I love the guy to death. Very close with him, and I think he's the right guy. It's good. He's going to figure it out. And sometimes, as we learned in football season, an early season loss or really an early season beatdown might be a good thing for them as they're learning and growing into the Marquette that they want to be, kind of building on the past and pushing forward in a new way. I mean, you just look. I didn't get a chance to watch the game yet. It's queued up per your comment, John. It's tough to watch all the games live because of how they're all condensed in one sitting. But if you look at the ground ball statistics, it looks like Michigan just killed them with even statistics all the way around. But just the ground ball statistic, it looked like Michigan must have just beat them up really bad on the ground, which created a lot more opportunities. And I'm guessing some ride backs and some things. Clearing might have been a problem for Marquette, and that's why you play a game. That's why you play a Big Ten opponent early. They're not going to see that level of athleticism. I know they have Detroit coming up on Saturday, so up in the dome up there. So it's going to be an interesting turnaround for them. And Michigan's just cruising along, right?
Chris, do you think changing coaches hurts Marquette out of the gate that first game, or do you just think they just played a better opponent?
Jake's, he lives and breathes Marquette. I think sitting in the head coaching seat's always different than what you expect, and it can be lonely. It's definitely lonely when the score goes next to your name for the first time. So, but again, Jake's one of the toughest guys I know. He's just such a great person, and that whole team will learn and grow together, and I know some good will come out of it. And again, the Big East is where they want to win. They want to win that conference. So kind of how you start these first couple games, it doesn't matter. You go back to this early football, Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois and Ohio State losing to Michigan and winning the national championship. These early games, if you have a great coach and a great culture and a great group of kids, winning and losing, winning can get you a little bit soft, and losing can really galvanize you if you got the right guy. And I think Marquette's, there with that. I think Michigan's just starting where they left off with the Big Ten championship. They're just going to keep rolling and getting better. So it's going to be interesting to see both teams next week.
John, staying with colleges, we're going to get a chance to talk a little bit later to Mike Shannels at Hope College. We also had a chance to talk to Zach Cameron, who's up at Alma in his second year, and there's some really interesting news coming out of there. I know we've had a conversation with Jake DeCola over at Albion, John, but you've covered those leagues. You know them pretty well. I think it's the same 1-2 horse race again, with maybe the bottom getting a little better, and we'll have that conversation later in the show with those coaches. But I'm looking for some pretty good opportunities for maybe Hope or Albion to maybe look over the mountain this year. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think you're going to see the talent level starting to pick up in D3. Obviously I'm an Albion grad, so I keep an eye on them. Pretty close. But also Mike's such a great guy too, so I can't help but keep an eye on Hope as well. But I think the competitive nature of D3 is just it's coming together. And this goes back to a little bit to the Marquette Michigan game. And one thing that I noticed, in the games that I was looking for over the weekend was the disparity in the talent levels. You look at the scores in those games, and it's just week one, but you only had two games that were decided by 3 goals. And you had a lot of big blowouts. And so when we talk about competitive balance in college lacrosse, I'm looking for more competitive games coming out of the D3 than I am really in the D1. Obviously, the big boys are going to compete, but I think that gap's getting wider, unfortunately, at the D1 level.
Mike Sandals at Hope is recruiting one of my kids next year, probably the fastest player I've coached in a long time. And if you look down his recruiting list, he really has gone after speed. And maybe that's the next level for him to get those players that can, when they start to play the Seton Halls and the Limestones and some of those kinds of teams who usually have Division I players. I think that's pretty accurate, Chris. And I think the reality to it is that if you get faster, you're going to be more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that's going to be so great for me in my new role in life is I'm so excited to go to a Hope Albion game. I've heard so many things, being close with both coaches about just the kind of energy level that those two teams bring to each other. I'm excited to see it in person for the first time. Albion has been kind of the big success in the MIAA for a long time. They have a lot of championships, but Hope has now kind of gotten over that, and it's starting to trend in a hope direction. And then you take Alma, who just built probably the nicest indoor facility. It's probably probably a nicer place to practice than what University of Michigan has. So and you got one coach who's got a singular direction, who's very motivated there. It's exciting. And then you got Coach Wetzel, who's one of the best over at Adrian. So you've got and Coach Hoger. He's like, you got these guys that are just so dedicated to kids and the growth in lacrosse. I mean, really anything can happen. And but Hope and Albion have kind of done it. But I'm excited to see everyone else kind of continue to grow. And I've been watching some of the recruits coming out of some of these other schools too. It's going to be a really interesting year in the MIAA. I'm excited. I think it's a great league for kids to kind of develop as humans and lacrosse players, and it's going to be just so fun for me to watch a little bit closer than when I was kind of worried about my own thing all the time. To kind of go see some games with my friends and see some kids compete at a very high level.
John, when I was talking to Zach, I just said, just out of curiosity, you're the only guy that I think I know at any level, from high school all the way up to college, is coaching by yourself. And one of the questions was, he was an offensive guy as a player at Saline, but where do you lean when you're having to coach both sides of the ball? And obviously he had spent some time as a defensive coordinator, but being a solo coach like that is tough.
Oh, that is tough. I mean,
it's going to be warm in that beautiful building.
You gotta love what you're doing. I'll tell you, you gotta love what you're doing. That's for sure. I mean, people ask me all the time, not to make it about me, but how do you broadcast an entire game by yourself when you have no one else to talk to? It makes it hard. I can't even imagine coaching by yourself.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, we're going to bring you those at the end of the show. And then, John, you and I are going to have a conversation here relatively quick. Last fall, there was a discussion about seating and eliminating seating. At least a proposal was put together by Cole Malatinsky from the Michigan High School Athletic Association, which was shared with some coaches. And I thought I was pretty connected, and I didn't really have this conversation until about the last month when guys started calling me, telling me that there was not going to be any seating for 2025. Well, you can go on the MHSAA website and figure that out. In talking with Dan Hutchinson, who is the new associate director for the MHSAA, he mentioned to me that I should probably touch base with Cole. Well, lo and behold, they didn't really have a proposal, as if giving something for the executive council to be able to make a determination. But he did an unbelievable database study of why it works and maybe some thoughts and some ideas. I'm not for or against, and there it is there. But you and I we're gonna split some hairs on this and have a conversation about the actual process and yeah, for real. And I was a very strong proponent of it in 2003. And Chris, you'll appreciate this. I had this 30-page document I got about 2:00 this afternoon, and I put it through my AI, And it literally in about 4 seconds gave me all the points instead of having to read through 5 pages, 35 pages. So, John, you now talk about that. Chris, I know you have a different version from a standpoint of seating as a college coach. Maybe you give us your 2 cents before we move on to the next subject.
Well, I'm one of those people when you don't know what you're talking about, you should probably not talk and listen. That's why you have 2 ears and one mouth. I don't know much about this, and I think my opinion is pretty worthless in the situation I haven't been a part of.
That's fair.
And, I've had my comments about the MHSAA over time and what they do and they don't. And I think in this case, I don't know enough.
Okay. And we'll leave it at that.
Well, I could ask him one question that would relate it back to college, and it would be direct for UDM as well. That into this, and it's about travel, and it's about seating based on location. What do you think about that? In general,
again, I've heard a little summaries of both sides of this, and I can see both advantages and disadvantages at this point. I think people that have lived it, and you guys have done a lot of scheduling and a lot of coaching and tried to put a lot of things together. I think you two, I'm eating up too much time here.
All right, good enough.
And I think it's an important point to make. We're not coming down with a position strong either way. I have written an email to Cole Malatinsky to see if we can get it published, because I think it's important for coaches to know, based on only one thought, and that was I've talked to at least 10 coaches this week who were confused and didn't really know what was true. And again, I think it's important to at least get the information out, since we've done this great job, and it's a really well-detailed plan that he put together. And I think it's something that we should have a conversation with. And while we haven't, and again, being the secretary of the association, I thought, that's something that probably would have come across my desk. But there's a lot of guys that don't know, and there's a lot of guys that are maybe not sure. And I think that's something that John and I will at least try to get the pros and the cons. We're not gonna give opinions, but it's something that should go public. I think that's a fair statement to make.
So most people are probably like me. So I'd love to hear.
In talking with a number of coaches, there was an awful lot of maybes. So that, and we'll get into that whole discussion. So I think we've got some pretty good things. Quick predictions. We've got tomorrow. We've got your old team headed down to Notre Dame, playing the number
Ohio State.
Ohio State, my mistake. You're right. Going down to see Nick Myers. Any thoughts?
We've had some great games against Ohio State. It's going to be interesting. They just played. They got snake bitten by a really good Utah team that really beat them up on the faceoffs and beat them up in transition. And Coach Myers is one of those guys who doesn't really like to show much early on and plays a pretty vanilla game early on. Can sometimes lead to closer games and situations. But Ohio State will be ready on Tuesday. I know U of D is going to be ready. I think they've done this trip a lot. You've got some kids that are ready. Last year, when we went down there, we went down pretty early and then came back and really gave them a scare for a little bit of the game. And if the wind blows the right way, and I'm sure they're going to have some tricks up their sleeves that at U of D that are different, that Ohio State's not going to be ready for. And I'm really hoping for a close game. I'm going to have my popcorn. I'm going to be ready to go at 3:00.
Chris, what's a moral victory for U of D?
I think winning the game is what you're trying to do, right? So okay. There's been a lot of 1 and 2 and 3 goal games against Ohio State this early on. We won one of them, and those kids are hungry. And the Ohio State just played a game on Saturday that could help or it could hurt. Okay. A lot of these Detroit guys know how to go down to this game. This is a no-brainer. This is 4 hours on the bus, eat some food, relax, get ready, and play the game. This is what these kids live for. So. It's why you play the game. So I'm excited for this one. I think it's always been a good battle, and Coach Myers is so classy to keep doing it, and I know Charlie and the guys will have them ready, and I'm just looking for a good one.
All right,
it's a big game. It's a big game for Ohio State. I mean, Nick Myers, a great guy, and and he's always been great with me as well, but. at some point you got to turn the corner here, and maybe that's a separate discussion we'll have depending on where the season goes. But I'm hearing rumors directly out of out of Columbus that he's on the hot seat right now. So we'll see.
Well, if everything works right, Chris will be back in a little bit talking with Jake DeCola. Up next, we're going to have a conversation. John, you and I will talk a little bit about seating. And after that, we'll certainly get a chance to talk to Mike Channels and from Hope College and Zach Cameron over at Alma. And he was it's one of the interviews you got to see because he was a really
Cool.
animated kid. And I shouldn't call him a kid, animated young man.
Passionate.
And it was really fun to talk to him. I'm wishing him the best. And we'll be back in a second. No, you're good. Welcome back. John, you're not going to get a chance to talk a little bit about the MHSAA seeding, which is a process that's been going on in the sport since 2003, since its inception, essentially putting the best teams against each other without need for geography and being able to make sure that the best teams don't, beat up on each other early in the tournament to make it, I guess, fair. I was certainly a proponent for seeding. We've had some questions. I've had some guys call and mention that, by the way, they keep hearing this rumor about seeding. And we talked to the state, we talked to Dan Hutchinson, and I've got a couple of pieces of information into Colt Maltinsky, who actually put together the report. The report we're going to discuss is not an official proposition that'll go to the executive council. It was just looking at numbers from the sport's inception to see if seeding mattered, if it made any sense. And so what we thought we would do is just spend a couple seconds. We talked to a bunch of coaches, and I think you talked to JD Hess. I talked to Chuck Vierick from Grand Blanc. I think there's a lot of people that might say maybe because I don't think they know much about it.
Yeah.
And I think what we want to be able to do is sort of publish this report and then maybe have another conversation in a couple of weeks about what it might be. We both just this afternoon we got the report. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's the document itself is incredible. I mean, it's it's a lot of data, and it took time and effort to do what they did, and so it's very well thought out. It is backed up by data, and in my mind, I look at it and I go, something that's not out there, right? I mean, you looked for it, I looked for it, I called anybody I could, and no one had it, and where there's smoke, there's fire to the degree of this being real, and it is real, and it's something that people need to be engaged in, because the worst thing is people sit on the sidelines and then they come and complain after it goes through when they had an opportunity to talk about it. And that's really what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah. I think it gives people a contrast of what we're talking about. This would be something like avoiding Catholic Central playing Brother Rice, avoiding Clarkston playing Lake Orion, avoiding on the west side, maybe East Grand Rapids playing Forest Hill Central. And those games may become, if you read the report, and again, we've just touched on the surface of this thing, not much would change over the period of time frame of the teams making the finals, but it turns out that the maybe regional games might change a little bit in terms of the study, the kind of the way it looks. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and you didn't have anywhere in there where you had a Rice and a CC in the regionals. You didn't have any Hartley. I mean, you didn't have, when you look at the way what they did is they reforecasted from 2021 all the way through last year, based on the way that they would have seeded it this way with the new proposal. And when you go through the brackets, because I was looking for those types of things where we would go, uh-oh. Like on the girls' side, right? The girls' side, you get it all the time just because it's not seeded. But you didn't see any of those ones that jumped out. Now, we've had games in the past like Heartland and Brighton, I think, are the one that stands out a lot. They seem to run into each other a lot. You saw Forest Hill Central and East Grand Rapids last year. But for the most part, you don't see it very much now. And I don't know I don't really know if you would see it even going forward. So that's yet to be seen.
Okay, so when you see the seeding, when that comes out, when you finally get the tournament settled and they get the formats in place, then you go back and look at some of the folks that are on the seeding committee. For the last 10 years, you could make a strong argument that there was some subjective decision making. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, and I'm certainly, if I'm a coach, I'm looking out for my own program. But wouldn't you want, as I read through this, again, I was a proponent of this process, wouldn't you want a sort of a uniform system, an algorithm that took the human element out of it?
Yeah.
Now, you can make an argument, let's get real specific. The Michigan Power Ranking, you can pick it apart, you can agree, you can disagree. It's, one of the things that it does, it takes wins and losses and then the state competition. Your argument might be that, well, it doesn't include people from out of state as a part of that process. And if you have a large contingent, let's use some of the Catholic League and some of the Midwest guys, that hurts them on a ranking perspective because they're playing some really good teams out of state.
Yeah.
I'm not going to debate good or bad because that's debate for another person. If I'm you, and I say you, if I'm part of the Catholic League, which I used to coach at St. Mary's, I'd make the argument that, yeah, that's something that I think should be important to me. If on the other hand, I'm Clarkston or I'm another team of a caliber that can play at the top 20 guys, I'm playing teams without that opportunity. So I'm getting killed because I don't get a chance to play that kind of team.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with the out of state, right? And that's again, we're not going to debate the MPR on this. But in this, a lot of it, I mean, everything's on the MPR in terms of that's a big portion of what's in here. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but in my mind, at first glance, it hinders people from wanting to go out and play teams out of state. Because you think about a Clarkston, they go, okay, well, you know what? If I go out of state, it's not going to help me in terms of my seeding, which is what we want, right? Or what they want. Yes, it's going to help my kids and it's going to help promote the game and help them get better. And so you put coaches into a balance where they say, why don't I just stay in state, play who I have? And if I beat all the teams in state by 20, then yeah, I'm going to have a great seed. But am I really a good team? Have I gotten better? That's where I go.
The one thing that sticks out to me is it does address the top of the pile, but does nothing to address the bottom of the pile. So the top of the pile is always going to be there, right? And that's my opinion.
Yep.
I think part of what's got me looking with a sort of a jaundiced eye in another direction is it gives me an opportunity maybe to play and develop the smaller and the lower programs because the travel is one thing. Okay, if we've got to travel and it's a cost factor, I'll use the region I was in. The last 2 years at Fenton, we've had either Forest Hill Central or East Grand Rapids. That's a lot of money to come all the way to Ann Arbor one year and Dexter the next. Their fans don't get a chance to travel as much. The one thing that is true with regional and geographical opportunities is there's more people going to go to games. You also have some built-in. You also have some built-in competition, and certainly with your neighbors. Those games. I mean, in East Grand Rapids, can you imagine a regional final, East Grand Rapids and Forest Hill Central? That's going to draw a lot of people. The argument obviously is, well, you just eliminated another team, and maybe a sub team might end up in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, we had that.
But there's one thing, and I did an AI on this thing to kind of reduce the pages, and the thing that hit me the most: enhancing fairness by objectively ranking teams based on the season's performance, leading to a more equitable and competitive tournament structure. Because again, there's no human element in making those decisions. And I think the point that I'm trying to make to you, which is really what we've been talking about for the last hour, is there's a lot of maybes. And I think until we get this report and read through it and kind of figure out, and maybe even take a vote, because I think you're going to find out that the teams the haves will vote in one direction, and the have-nots maybe find it very interesting.
It could go the other way, though. I mean, I would look at this as one of the top programs and go, again, this is not helping. This is hindering me from going out of state to play the best competition. It's forcing me to play in-state games. And for the have-nots, for you, I mean, they say it specifically in the document, it's going to make regional championships, highlighted more. And so in their mind, they're thinking that lesser teams in mid to northern Michigan potentially being able to compete for, regional championships makes a difference. There's where the travel comes into play. So your point is exactly spot on. A lot of maybes. There's some good things in there. There's some not so good things in there that I may agree with and disagree with. But until it's not up to me, right? I'm just a dad that cares about the game a lot, and so I think there's things in there. The biggest thing for me, two things. Number one, the effort that the MHSAA put into this, right? That shows commitment to the sport, which is what I've always wanted from them. And then the second part is the call to action for the Coaches Association. You cannot sit on your hands and let something like this go through that is going to stand for a very, very long time, right? I mean, this is something that's tangible, that is going to sit there and be there for a long time, and if ever it gets there.
Is that a vote for keeping seating? Is that what I heard from you?
No, I think listen, I'll say this. I know what you're trying to do. That's okay. I'm good. The preseason seating based on last year is dumb, right? I mean, we can all agree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just, it's pointless. And the ability to look at teams that improve over the course of the year, that may be better than they thought they were going to. I mean, that has value. To put, I remember Cranbrook a couple of years ago, right? I mean, they were supposed to have a regional, but they didn't because they lost, but they had a tough sketch. I mean, so they were a good team, but because their record and how they were preceded made a big difference. And so I think there's a lot of things that can be cleaned up. I don't think it should go as far as it is in this document, but I think that there's some good things to talk about.
Well, then
How's it not?
the question kind of becomes is should the other 28 sports bend to seating or should the one lone wolf bend to the mass? In this
I
case, no
think it's
seating.
hard. Yeah, I mean, I think it's numbers, right? I mean, imagine trying to do this for, basketball, right? Or I mean, it's just, we're going to see it this year. Right? I mean, Brother Rice and the University of Detroit Jesuit, number one and number two in the state of Michigan in basketball, are on a collision course meet in the district finals this year. And so when that happens, you're going to be like, well, does that make sense? And so how do you feel about that when you see that happen this year?
I had a long time ago, I did a story. There was a Western UP team that had gotten knocked out of a basketball region for years, and the neighboring team always won. Just was one of those things. And I posed the question. I was a young reporter. I posed the question to the coach: how do you ever get over the hump to get past the district? You get to the district finals every year, and you get beat by 20. He says, I got to get better. I says, yeah, but you've been here 29 years and you've never beaten them. He says, yep, maybe this 30th year we will. He said, my kids learn more from having to work with the struggle than to making a rule. Now, I'm going back 40 years on this story. He says they learn more from the struggle, knowing that they have to get over the mountain, than if, in fact, we made a rule to go west and play another team and eventually work around it because we had to change the rules to make something hard.
Right.
And
That's
it
life.
wasn't a movie at the time, but we do it because the hard makes it matter.
It's like we have to do the hard things in life to make life easier, right? And that's what life is about. And so, just like we talk about in these early games where all these teams, are getting there and getting blown out by 19 goals. And people go, well, that's not fair. When you go, well, listen, life is not fair, right? I get it, right? I'm not talking about beating kids down and demoralizing them, but I've been at these games and I've seen these teams lose, and they're not going home with their head between their. I mean, they're out there working hard till the end, and scoring one or two goals against Brother Rice or against Catholic Central or against FHC is a big deal to them. So, that's
Okay.
where the Division 3, right? That came up with my interview with JD Hess. We talked about adding another division. That's just a separate type of a conversation. So, I think I think lacrosse is unique. It's a unique sport. It's smaller than all the other ones, and so I think this may be a good litmus test to see maybe this could work or something.
But does the MHSAA make rules for just these specialty sports, or they make rules for all 29? And
Good question.
you can't have a set of rules for every team in every sport. You can't.
Girls lacrosse and boys lacrosse, right? I mean, totally different in how they run the tournament. Right? So, I mean, they're doing it now, unfortunately, and I would have rather them taken about maybe 30% of what they put into this report and just focused on how to fix the girls lacrosse seating right now. Let's do that. Something that actually is broken needs to be fixed. This one doesn't necessarily need to be fixed today.
Okay, so let me add the last, and this will be the hypothetical. This is real. I'm in a region that two Grand Rapids, very good Division 1 Grand Rapids teams are going to come. I get a chance to get to the regional semi. I lose in overtime to a very good team who turns around and plays a team. They play one of those Grand Rapids teams and get by 25. I posed it to the kids. Would you rather lose in a really good game in the semi that you just up and down the field and it was fun and there were no penalties and it was just a great high school experience?
Yep,
Or do you want to win one more, have one practice, and then go get your butts kicked? And I don't know that I've ever come to the answer to that, but that kind of goes around with this seating.
it
If
does.
every time I look down the map, I know my season's going to end at the regional final, maybe. Why am I Why are they working harder? Why? My job is to make my team better. I get that. But how do I get up if I never ever get a chance to get? And that's the argument that we're going to have for the next couple of months. But
Here's the thing, right? I mean, when you break down the season of lacrosse, when you take out the holidays I mean, you're looking at about 64 days or, somewhere in there for the regular season. And so it's not a long time. And this is about being as a team. And so when we say about another week for a team, I think that's important. That's another week of practice, another weekend, another week with your teammates and your classmates. Because lacrosse is a sport now where kids are playing in the summer and they're not going to play with the majority of their teammates. But you know, I think the longer that the kids can play, the better it is. That's just me. The more touches, the better it is.
well, we hopefully will be able to get a chance to get this report out to everybody. If we get all the yeses and our board does what they're supposed to, we'll be able to get a chance to see it. It exists. If you want to send me an email, I'd be more than happy to send you a copy because there's nothing that says I can't do that.
Put that out there. You're going to get in calls.
But I think it's important for everybody to see it and have a conversation because let's be really clear. They've done an unbelievably good job of putting a report together, and I think it's a very fair report. I think the other part, it's very much based in the facts
Logic.
and,
Yeah.
it's a database kind of program. I think Cole Malatinsky did an unbelievably good job, but it's got to see the light to at least have some opportunity for discussion, and hopefully that will come. But it is not, and I want to be really clear about this. This is not a proposal that's going to the MHSAA Executive Council for any kind of decision. This is strictly a working document that we can discuss the facts.
What
Nothing
if?
more, nothing less. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this is gonna hurt my work day tomorrow, but or tonight, but I'm gonna dive deeper into it. And so I'm gonna go into those regions, those reforecasting and look at some of the games that you talked about that potentially there with some games that wouldn't have normally hit. So, but at first glance in the hour that I spent on it, like I said, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is well put together. It's based on logic and facts and data. And there is some opinion in there, right? The NPR, that's a big question for me, but hey, this is what helps sports. This is what helps the kids. If our goal is to help the kids and the sport, then this is the kind of document that needs to be discussed.
I have a really good time when I get the eventual schedule and then I get the list of the guys that run the committee. And I don't begrudge them every opportunity to do what they need to do. There's
I don't
a
even
couple
understand
teams that we
it.
mentioned earlier that faced each other, and then when both guys got in the committee, they didn't see each other for 5 years. They went in opposite directions. It's a competitive advantage, competitive disadvantage. I'm not arguing the point. I always have kind of some fun with it, but if I get beat, I got to get better. That's just the way we've always been operating. But there's been some, finger on the scale. But it also leads to what hopefully may be a conversation in the next couple of weeks, which is we're playing 18 games and we're trying to do it in a relatively short period. We might consider maybe we have a conversation about lesser games. I think a college is playing 12, 13. They're playing once a week, maybe twice a week. That's another conversation for another day. So if you get a chance to take a look, if it gets posted on the Michigan High School Lacrosse Coaches Association website. If not, find my email and I'll send you a copy. So appreciate you having the
Or
conversation.
I may just go on Losie's locker room and dissect it myself.
That's fine. All right. Well, listen, we got this out of the way. Stay in a couple of seconds to get a chance to hear some conversations with Mike Shannels from Hope and Zach Cameron from Elma in his second year. And if you're talking about a guy swimming upstream and up the hill, there's not a better kid to have that opportunity. He's going to learn a ton.
Awesome.
But he's tackling it with both hands in a fly rod, and I'm telling you something. It's really fun to talk to him, and I wish him all the best because it was a fun interview to listen to. So
infectious, yeah, it's infectious, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff you want people to go out and see what you can do, and he's all about that. He's taking this challenge on head first. Great facility, everything like that. I love to see it. It's awesome.
All right, John. We'll be back in a second.
We don't just repair injuries, we look within to harness the body's own power to heal and decipher the delicate balance of tendon, cartilage, and bone. Developing new treatments so you recover faster. The Stedman Clinic and Stedman Philippon Research Institute. The future of orthopedic medicine is here.
We see athletes as the ones that set goals, goals in the recovery of a life-altering injury, the individuals that redefine the magic of getting back up, those that reframe their own recoveries to not be identified by their disability, but by what they will find next as their new ability to succeed. We are High Fives, the safety net of the outdoor sports community.
I'll never forget the day I nearly died. The only way we found out I had any kind of heart issue was when I went into sudden death. I think unless you are a heart disease patient, you may not know how much work the American Heart Association does behind the scenes to save your life. Since my cardiac arrest, I've watched all 3 of my children grow into adulthood, and I'm still here.
Learn more about the American Heart Association's work at helpheart.org.
Welcome back. We're talking to one of our favorite coaches, Mike Shannels, the head coach at Hope College. Just about to start your 13th season, and you're heading out to Colorado for your first on the 8th and 9th, or 8th and 10th, actually. You're going to play Rhodes College in Colorado, so you're starting out in the fire pretty quick, right, Mike?
We are. Yeah, this is going to be a really good experience for us. We've been fortunate enough to make the NCAA tournament. But we have to travel, right? So that's tulip time here. We know with pretty much absolute certainty if we make the tournament, we're going to have to travel, and it's going to be a factor. And so, this is a nice way for us to tune up for that. And we've obviously learned a lot from our experiences in the past, but I think this is really good. And then Mike Horowitz at Colorado College was gracious enough to come out and play us last year. So this is nice that we get an opportunity to go visit them and see their school and be with a really good dude and good competition out there. So it'd be a great way for us to flip the switch and get this season rolling.
If you load up early and lose, does it hurt you at the end?
Well, let's not think in those terms, but
Okay.
I do understand like the question, like, is it the Tom Izzo schedule where you're just a gauntlet? So
Right.
we do have a little bit of that at the beginning, but I'm also really confident in our team and these guys. We're a really talented group and a very motivated, hungry group, so they're fired up about it. But it definitely does depends on your dudes and what they're up for. So we kind of knew we could put a challenging trip together for us. We have a winter break, so we won't miss any class. It'll be a nice way for us to get out there and get it going, and then we have a little bit more time to figure it out. And then there was a lot of combinations of conferences that are adjacent to us. And so the scheduling this year was a challenge, to try to get our non-conference games. And then our conference moved the schedule by a date to accommodate more teams in the playoffs. So we had it was a little bit of a kettle of fish trying to get our schedule put together. So we feel really fortunate that we've got some great teams on there.
Didn't mean to sound like a naysayer to start out of the gun. You obviously had
No.
You had some
I
great
didn't take it that
success.
way.
You've had 4 trips to the NCAA Division III tournament. You've won 4 MIAA tournaments, and you're starting your 13th year. 125 and 56 isn't a bad record, but part of that is you've sort of built this in a slow burn, moving up the hill. And as you're moving it towards being one of those sort of national levels, certainly you've already accomplished the regional acclaim, being able to be into the tournaments and having the success you've had over the last 5 years. What's the next step for you? Maybe that's going to Colorado. What's the next step for Hope to sort of peek over the mountain and start to play with the big boys?
Yeah, we need to win, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to play some of those games, right? So what a blessing to be able to go to RIT in the second round of the tournament, see them, face them, learn from them. They're very gracious, hosts, and they kicked our butt. So we've got to go back and learn from that. But you can't do that on film. That has to be the whole totality of the experience. And they're not in our travel radius, so they're not probably going to be in our regular season. So it's a really lucky opportunity for us to to go out there and do that. And I think we learned a lot from going out to Christopher Newport, before that. And so it's been a really fun process, to take this from, just a bunch of dudes who wanted to play ball to, try to aspire and get to this level and get to the next level. So we're very excited about it.
Mike, it's more than talent, isn't it? It's a process. It's got to be more than just adding a player or two or three. It's got to be all of that goes into it, the camaraderie, the scheme, the defense, all of those things. And at that level, it's the old joke about, you can make a golfer go from 120 to 100. It's pretty easy. But to go from 80 to 75 is like 17 times more difficult because of just the process and the pressure. Is that fair?
Amen to that. Yeah. I mean, I think the top few teams in Division III have established themselves, and have been that way for a very, very long time, since before we were even a twinkle, right? So we need to learn as much as we can from them, and we're going to need to do it the hard way in a way, right? They're not coming to us, so we're going to need to figure out how to go out there and compete.
Talk briefly the MIAA season. We're doing a little bit of a kind of a preseason discussion. We did some of the Division I teams last week on our first show. Talk a little bit about your entry into the MIAA this year and what your expectations are.
I think we want to build on the success that we had last year. We've got exceptional depth on our team. We've got a wonderful group of freshmen, and there's no way to replace the seniors that graduated last year, but there's an energy to our team with the new guys that are here with us that it's been contagious, and a very, very competitive atmosphere day to day here. And we know that's sort of table stakes. If you want to do big things, you got to do good work every day. So we feel like we're in a good spot to carry that culture and that work ethic and that day-to-day joy in playing forward. And it's our first practice today. The sun's shining. We just cannot wait to get out there.
I want to ask an obvious question, and it may seem a silly question, but is it easier to recruit when you win?
That it's way easier. Are you kidding me? Like it's so much easier. And I think, back when we were an MCLA school, right? So that's when I came on when we flipped the switch to go to MCLA. We won more, we got better recruits than that, but we still couldn't even talk to some people because we were MCLA and not NCAA. So now we're NCAA. We can talk to people, but we were regional, not national. Now we have more conversations with kids that are from all over the place, and we've got recruiting classes now for the last 3 years that are pretty diverse in terms of it's not just dudes, tough guys from West Michigan or Detroit anymore. There's guys from Chicago that are coming. We've got dudes from Colorado and California. We've got a kid coming next year from North Carolina. So we have had conversations with people that, yeah, absolutely. 5 years ago, we're not having a conversation with that person. And once you get to know Hope, there's a lot to love about, who we are, where we are, what it's like here, what the feel is like here on campus. So, if we can get their attention, it's we've got a chance. So
Okay,
it's
so
been nice.
If that's the obvious question, then the follow-up question has to be, when it's easier to recruit, do you have to be smarter in your process?
Absolutely. I think for us, I spent so many years of my life trying to get people to play lacrosse because it's so fun, right? And now I'm in the unfortunate position where I have to tell some people that they can't play. So we have a roster cap of 45 guys, and so we absolutely have to be selective and not just on the lacrosse field, right? But in terms of the school, the fit's got to be right for people, and then in terms of the dude, they gotta get along with our dudes. So I really ask our guys and I listen to our guys. Be like, this guy, is he gonna fit? So it is evolved as a process for us for sure, but it's also reinforced and strengthened because we've got good people here, and I trust their judgment.
Well, we wish you the best of luck this season. We'll certainly be checking in. and have a very successful trip to Colorado. And maybe at the end of the season, maybe this is the year you kind of peek over the edge and see the bigger light for what it's worth.
We're going to put the hammer down and try to do just that. So thanks, Coach.
I'm Naheem Hines. I support the Muscular Dystrophy Association because they help my mom and kids like Ethan.
Thanks to the Muscular Dystrophy Association and people like you, I have more hope than ever before.
Join us and learn more at mda.org today.
Welcome back. We're talking with Alma head coach Zach Cameron. Zach, starting your second year, bit of a rough year at 1-12, but you kind of inherited a program that was in a pretty bad state. And you've kind of solidified the roster, and I know you're 1-12 last year, but everything we hear coming out of Elm all of a sudden seems to be pretty positive. So that's kind of cool. So talk a little bit about this year and what you expect.
Oh yeah. So last year we kind of started out we had 2 players that actually had college experience going into the season. So we played a few close games out of conference that, if we had more experience, could have obviously gone our way. But this year we got way more experience. We got better leadership on the team now overall. Plus we got a little secret of the indoor field house now that, we get to go on turf and actually practice full time all year round now. So yeah.
For you, it's a Saline kid, high school kid to Grand Valley, playing for Tim Murray. It's obviously 7 years as an assistant at Kalamazoo. So you've had a good experience with some really good coaches.
Oh yeah.
And now you kind of decide last year you're going to kind of strike out on your own. And what prompts you, I guess it's running your own program, but did you know you were falling off the dock quite as far as you were going to fall off, or is that something that was calculated?
Oh, it's pretty calculated. Kind of went with my degrees too. I started off being an athletic training major, switched to education because I fell in love with coaching. Originally my goal too was go back and coach high school lacrosse. And then, obviously getting the mentorship with Redco, it kind of worked out where he's like, you can do this for a career. And then I kind of, pathed that way, got my master's. And once I, finished school, kind of started looking for that head coaching role.
You're looking at a roster of, less than the number of kids you want last year. You start to have to look at things. What do you prioritize as what the most important thing is last year? How does that carry over? And what is it going to help you with this year? And what do you have to do this year to be even semi-successful and get up the road a little bit?
Yeah. So the biggest thing with a big struggle that came into was kind of rebuilding that culture for the program. So that's still our biggest, struggle overall, to make sure we keep building that, keep the guys locked in for the culture itself. It's kind of hard keeping guys locked in at 1-12 for most situations. We never had a guy quit on us. We never had a guy not want to be at practice. Guys are putting time in off the field all season. Guys are putting time in. So that kind of culture that we wanted to bring in carried over, and that's still what we want to build off on. Not only to help us win more games in the future, but getting the guys on campus that we want are going to come in and see that culture, which really helps build that program. So obviously on the field stuff too, we need to get better of stick skills. We have multiple new guys still, whether it be they started last year was their first season, or we have 1 or 2 guys that this is their first season too, where obviously we need catching them up on the field. But having that culture itself built in already definitely helps a lot. Really helps with overall just, team building together and working those guys out, in the off season and, outside of practice. So that culture is the biggest key for us for sure.
Pretty remarkable when you think about a college kid picking up the sport for the first time. He's a football player, or, whatever other sport he plays, and all of a sudden you're playing at a collegiate level in a relatively, strong Division III, regional Western Regional League. I think that's a testament to what you're trying to accomplish.
Oh yeah.
You open the season on Saturday the 8th.
Correct.
And you're going to go. You're going to host the University of Michigan Dearborn. They're still club team. They're still club team, if I'm not mistaken.
They're MIAA.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so you kind of go to head to Richmond and Roham. So my question is, you're starting out with, I think, compatible schedule, which probably give you a chance. You can practice all you want, but if you don't win at some point, if you don't have some success at some point, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But how hard is it for you knowing that the Hopes and the Albions, which are now starting to look over to a national kind of level,
yep.
You got to kind of go along with it. You're chasing some pretty good programs in the MIAA. It's a very good league.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. So overall, this year I was able to actually get in and make the schedule. Last year, the schedule itself was kind of set once I got the job. I added like 1-2 teams max, and the rest of it was already set for me. So For us, yeah, we want to go play some of the similar teams that, the Hopes and Albions are playing too. Obviously, right now we're not that spot. We need to, play games that help us grow and get better overall, which I think this schedule this year is really going to help us with too. We had some games against good teams where, we would be up 8 goals against a team and we just didn't have the experience of knowing how to win and close out the games. And we end up, losing some of these games last year. So I think that's kind of the experience we're trying to build with the schedule now. And as we get more numbers and, get more like lacrosse players overall, we, want to play those same teams. But obviously it's kind of like the building steps too. Obviously we want to keep getting better and keep playing those better teams, but realistically we're playing teams like that in conference every year with Hope and Albion too. So
Do you give yourself a time frame in this thing, or where you want to be at some point?
yeah, so this class, so the freshman class we're trying to get right now is going to be really like our building stuff or like a foundation for, building the program. It's my first full recruiting class too, from when I got, stepped in here too. So once again, we're telling guys too, we're not like, hey, we have these good teams on our program. You guys are going to come in and get a lot of playing time for us. You're going to be that building block. But obviously the first year they're here, we're not going to be being the Hopes right away. But when those guys are juniors, seniors, they have a ton of experience. They might have more playing experience than some of the seniors elsewhere. We'll be in a good spot. Hopefully that's kind of our goals. Once that class becomes junior seniors, that we're up there competing with everyone else.
Student athletes, when they're looking at Division III schools, obviously look at education first. Alma's obviously got a great educational program. You got some new facilities, which also helps.
Oh yeah.
By the coach, but when they see some places you got a new facility, talk briefly about the facility, because when you get a chance to practice indoor instead of when you got to go out in January up to your knees in snow, that's a point that maybe some of the other schools don't have.
Yeah, and obviously coaching in the conference too, I kind of got a sense of that for the last 7 years of who has what. But I mean, yeah, having a new indoor turf field that opened, we are the first team on that turf this year too, so we got to get to mark our legacy of that as well, which is pretty cool for the guys to say. But yeah, so it's 60 yards worth of turf lengthwise, full sideline to sideline as any other field. So for sixes, full practices is honestly a perfect size for us. Obviously, we wish we could play games in there sometimes too. It's not that size, but from a practice standpoint, an advantage of always having a turf field for us to use is huge. Along with that too, we can do film. There's an extra weight room in there, so we have 2 varsity weight rooms now, which is awesome. And I mean, realistically, it's nice for the guys. You go to one facility, you can do film, weight lift, and practice indoors. Plus, there's a track if you want to get some running in too. So you got everything you need.
As a single coach,
yep.
Are you an offense or defensive guy primarily?
So I prefer coaching offense.
Okay.
I've coached both.
All right. So I understand that, and I understand it. If we have a choice, I don't coach defense, I coach offense. I mean, I get that premise. But here's my question. Tonight's practice.
Oh yeah.
If you're an offensive guy, do you find yourself leaning towards offense and defense gets there, or do you have to be really smart about sort of that 50% division because there's nobody to bounce anything off? You don't have another coach.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I've been in situations too where it's just me, especially when I first got here. It was just me to start out, and I'm very thankful with my experience at K that I got the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. So I kind of, even when I'm coaching offense, when I'm an assistant coach, I'm still bouncing ideas of him for defense and vice versa if I'm coaching a defense. So, yeah, is it hard sometimes for me to pull back and not be more offense focused when we're doing sixes and stuff? Yeah, because that's what I really enjoy. But I think having the experiences I've had as an assistant coach really helps being able to manage doing both for the team.
I say that because my defensive coordinator all the time has to remind me, we'll be working on a 20-minute defensive segment.
Yep.
We're working on something. He'll ask me to run a specific offense so we can get used to understanding how it is. And then they'll stop us, and I'll get mad and put some kind of an offense in to start scoring. Which doesn't help the defense. And I get a personal satisfaction of one-upping it, but it doesn't help the kids learn anything. You have that internal discussion, but you gotta, it's that one, you got to remember what hat to wear. But being a solo, you got to really, that's got to be a heck of a conversation in your head.
Oh, yeah. And I'm very lucky too. I do have a goalie coach that comes out like once or twice a week. So at least our goalies get some more, love out of him too. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely some balance and, some pulling the offense away a little bit for myself and really focusing on the defense more some days. But, we're making it work. And, I'm kind of excited to see. It's a good test for myself too, and my coaching ability to see how a whole season goes, just myself.
Cool. Well, no lack of enthusiasm on your part, and that's pretty cool to see. Obviously, you're doing a great job. Everything we hear lots of good stuff coming out of Helma. So we wish you the best of luck, and we will keep track during the season and see how you are. Probably have another conversation.
I appreciate it. Yeah, look forward to talking to you more.